bolting everything together is fairly easy, but once you have to start making the panels look like they fit, it can get tedious because you have to cut and move metal around and make all the gaps on the truck look nice.
Now that the truck has been put back on its new chassis, it's time for Jeremy and crew to gap the body, making sure that all parts of the body line up and that all the gaps between panels are consistent.
You have to make sure the door panel is not too far in or too far out and not leaning in or out at the top or bottom, so it's flush with the panels next to it.
To make it right and hold consistent gaps, we'll adjust the panel as best we can, and then we'll go through and we'll actually scribe a line on it. And if there's too much metal, we'll grind it away. If there's not enough, we'll add filler rod with a welder on the edges of the panels. And then we go through and we grind the whole door gap. What we're shooting for is like a 3/16 perfect gap around the entire perimeter of that door.
Some new parts in the engine compartment meant having to slim down the fenders to make the hood fit. Once the initial gapping is done, just like a good student, you go back and check your work.
We usually have a gap tool.
We'll kind of just drag it through all the different gaps to make sure if there's any resistance on it, it's too tight. If it's bouncing around, then we've got to go back and add more filler onto it. There's a lot of work and a lot of skill in doing it, but as a finished product, it totally sets it apart from, the guy who didn't do it.
When you look at a brand new vehicle, it has really nice gaps all the way around. When we're done with these vehicles, we want you to look at them and see nice even gaps, like all the panels fit perfectly together like a puzzle.
Underneath the truck is the voice of the engine, the exhaust. Next episode, we'll show you how it was installed piece by piece.
Weld that exhaust tip on first and weld everything else up, it's going to be wherever it wants to be.
There's an order to the way we're putting in the exhaust on the 1969 C-10 being restored and modified by the Roadster Shop and Craftsman Tools. In this episode, we'll show you why and how.
We mount our exhausts rigid to the chassis, whereas manufacturers of cars would mount their exhausts on rubber hangers with long bars. We don't have that option because there isn't a lot of room up under these cars. On this truck, we're using Flowmaster's 409 stainless steel mandrel bend tubing. We're using Flowmaster mufflers. They're also stainless. On this car, the exhaust is not symmetrical due to the fact that the cylinder heads are slightly offset of each other, and it's got a different header for each side.
So now that we know all of that, let's take a closer look at all the steps and tools used to put in this new Flowmaster exhaust system.
We started off with 3-bolt flanges that attach to the current 3-bolt flange that is on the header. That's your starting point.
From there, he can cut pieces and start fitting it all together. Dave had to work with compound angles and get the exhaust through tight areas while still keeping it far away from any areas where it might burn paint or heat up the cab. When working with angles like this, there is a mistake you don't want to make.
When you're cutting the exhaust itself, the fit pieces, don't miter anything. You always want to cut the tube within the radius of the tube. Say you're working with 3-inch, you always have a 3-inch circle. You don't have a long, sharp angle like you would on a miter. And sometimes that definitely interrupts the flow of the exhaust. You want to focus on making it look like it flows perfectly. Once I get it to where I like the way that it looks, I'm going to go ahead and tack it in place. From there, I'm going to grab another one and start figuring out how I'm going to get through the chassis to where I want to go. Every so often you'll want to say, well, I think we'll put a hanger here or a hanger here. When you get to a certain point, it's probably best if you stop, weld it up what you have done, and continue your way back. If you don't stop and weld it up, chances are when you weld it, everything's going to move a little bit.
Following this process all the way to the back, he could then put on the through-design muffler and exhaust tips. This whole Flowmaster exhaust will sound great,
On the C-10, the pairing between the custom engine that we're having built and then the exhaust, it's going to have a rumble that's unmistakable.
Look at that nice smooth paint finish. Well, before that paint can even go on, the body metal needed to be meticulously prepared. We'll show you how next episode. With the deadline on this muscle truck fast approaching, at least one crew member is stopping to appreciate his own art.
One thing you always have to be an open mind to and as an auto body tech is you're now sculpting this vehicle.
The body was gapped, which means the metal surface isn't exactly smooth and even. Before it can be painted, the body will be smoothed with filler, and it's all done by part of the paint team and is led by this character.
My name's Dan Luttrell, and I'm one of the fortunate few that get to work here at the Roadster shop. On the Craftsman truck today, we demonstrated there were a few little minor dings and imperfections on the front of the door where it meets the front fender.
So Dan and company start by aggregating the metal surface to give the body filler something to adhere to. After that, the filler is mixed with a hardener. Once it's mixed, it's then applied to the truck body. After that, it needs to dry, which means Dan has to find a way to, kill some time. Okay, back to work. Now we can use a sanding block to shape the filler.
Spots like this, high, spots where I have filler hasn't been touched, low spots. Once I had the top section to the desired shape, I strung a piece of tape down the body line so that way I can bring that body line all the way through the entire vehicle.
But why the entire vehicle?
Like everything we do here at the Roadster shop, we take things to the next level.
Once all the body sculpting is complete and we're 100% certain it's smooth, it's then primed and sanded again. Now it can move into the paint bay where we'll show you how to apply the perfect two-tone paint job. But you'll have to wait till the next episode. Chevrolet makes a good-looking truck, but as with everything we do here at the Roadster shop, we want this to have its own special look. So in this episode, we'll talk about how we designed the 69 C-10 to be restored and modified. Before any car is put into production in our shop, it goes through a design process. That's done by this man right here.
Hi, I'm Chris. My job here at the Roadster shop is designer. This is something I've always wanted to do. I didn't know I was able to do it. I went to study industrial design. On graduating, I thought I would be something like a furniture designer working in a normal industrial design office, all the while being fascinated by cars since I could walk and talk. I never thought I could somehow combine them into this fantastic job that I have here. I'll be doing the rendering for the vehicle, the design direction. It's not easy to put it down and walk away from it because it's a creative process. I'll go home at night with something in the back of my head that I'll think of it at home, and I'll come in the next day and draw it out, or I'll draw it at home and bring it in, and it'll be maybe not the idea, but it'll be the jumping off point to the next idea. I've got a few ideas for the Craftsman truck. We're going to put it on our Roadster shop chassis, so it's going to be low. I like the trucks low. Kind of a classical paint scheme and trim setup with the two-tone, possibly a split from the cab to the body and then on the side panel of the truck. And so it's built for performance, but still looks very much like the classic truck, but with upgrades like bigger brakes, better handling, a little bit more creature comforts than normal. I don't believe it's hard to make a 69 C10 look badass. I think that from the factory they had a nice clean lines. They were a handsome truck. There weren't a lot of bad lines on them, so we have a pretty good foundation to start with. It can be a cool truck.
Choosing the design and color of the truck is one thing, but getting that color to shine, that's another. So next episode, we'll lay down layer after layer of details when we talk about painting. A couple of episodes ago, we saw the body of this 1969 Chevy C-10 get smoothed for paint. Now it's time to put down some layers. Today, it's all about the perfect paint job. The paint crew has their turn to step up to the plate. They start by hanging all the body pieces in the paint bay. A layer of sealant is sprayed on before any paint. Once it has a chance to dry, this guy starts masking off the areas they'll be painting first.
They call me Big Mike because I'm the biggest Mike. Masking is very important to the paint job. We want everything to be sealed up tight, all the tape to be stuck down perfectly, and we don't want any of our lines to be off. We want everything to look nice and crisp. So it's very crucial to having a quality paint job.
So the first area is painted with 4 coats of white. However, there's some overspray. We can mask off the freshly painted area. Then that oversprayed paint is lightly sanded down and cleaned off. Then the next paint color, charcoal, to achieve the two-tone look. Once the layers of paint are all down and smooth, it's on to clear coat. 5 layers of it.
After the truck's clear coated, we'll put it through a bake cycle, turn the booth up to 140 degrees, and let it bake for 45 minutes to an hour.
Once the paint and clear coat sit for a while to allow all the chemicals to cure, it's then time to wet sand.
Wet sanding and polishing is basically where we use a variety of sandpaper grits to knock all the texture out of the paint, make sure everything is as smooth and flat as possible, and then when we polish it back up, it'll shine like it's wet.
The wet sanding and polishing is a long process that takes days, even weeks. But the result is a distinct shine that makes all that hard work and attention to detail worth it.
This thing's gonna look pretty bad at. Can I say that?
Yeah. With the body of the truck going back on the chassis, it's time to give this thing some horsepower. Next episode, we'll show you the pre-assembly of the engine and transmission.